What's shaking, my friends? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Shay, and today we're going to talk about just how my reading went in the month of October. If you didn't know, in September I read an astronomical, world-breaking record for myself and read over 9,000 pages and 23 books. This kind of put me in a little bit of slump, even though at the beginning of every month I get so excited to start over and read some new things. So I did slow down this month, and I was in kind of a slump. I read a total of, I finished 12 books, I DNF'd 2 books, and I read a total of 4,418 pages. So let's just hop right into it. Like all my wrap-ups, I will start from my lowest rated to my highest rated, and let's talk about the DNFs first. So my first DNF, I'm not going to name because it was a self-published horror novel. I picked it because I liked the cover, but it absolutely positively has hardly no reviews on Amazon or Goodreads. It's not very many. So the reviews that are there are positive, so I don't want to name this author because I feel like when a book has that low of reviews, I will hurt them when I do. But it's just the writing style didn't vibe with me, and so I DNF'd it. But I did get, I went almost 50% into the book, I believe. 30 to 50%, I can't recall. The second book I DNF'd was really not a shocker to me, and that's Spontaneous Human Combustion by Richard Thomas, I believe it is. It's a short story horror collection, and I think my problem with this is these short stories, I thought horror short stories were gonna be where it was at. I just wanted something fun, like here's a short story. I thought these short stories were gonna be fantastic. I normally don't like short stories. I thought horror short stories were maybe gonna be a little bit different. However, it was not. So I think from now on I need to attack short stories like read a story here, a week later read another story. I don't know. These didn't work for me because they were very thought-provoking. So each short story had like a lesson or something deeper you were supposed to get plot, and I read 5 of them, and I gave 4 of them 3 stars and 1 of them 4 stars, and decided to go ahead because most of the reads were just 3 stars. Alright, let's talk about the books that I did finish. Again, I have the flu, so my voice is a little bit still raspy, and I apologize for that. I had the flu. I'm getting over it. Okay. Coming in at 3 stars. Really, it's a generous 3 stars. It's going to be Dear Laura by Gemma Amor, I think is how you say her name. This is a short horror novella that follows this girl in her childhood. She watches her boyfriend get kidnapped and he's never found, and basically there are these haunting letters that come to her door that say they know where her boyfriend is or they killed her boyfriend, and it kind of goes through the years and the decades of her receiving these letters and what becomes of it in the end. And I think again with horror, it's so subjective. It's so like either the ending is going to work for you or the ending is not going to work for you, and it's going to totally throw off the whole experience. And I really did enjoy my experience reading this. It was very compulsively readable, but again the end was just so disappointing, so it knocked it down to 3 stars. The next book is another book that I read for that horror reading vlog that I did, and that's going to be The Little Woods by A.G. Mock. This was a little bit of a longer horror, and I think it was just too long. It was 400 some odd pages, and it follows this older man, and something happens that's traumatic to him that brings him back to some things that have happened in his childhood, and so around some kind of haunting woods. I enjoyed the story. I thought it was very long though, and again with I think this is supposed to be a continuation. It's supposed to be the first in the series. I have no idea if there's gonna be any more released. I haven't heard anything. However, I just didn't vibe with the way it was, the ending, the explanations, and just the longness of the story. Both the past 2 that I read, Dear Laura and Little Woods, were self or indie published. The next book that I rated 3 stars is The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. And this book has been going around everywhere, and I think it's, again, the same for horror. Either the ending and the stuff works for you or it doesn't. And this sadly did not work for me. The premise is this young girl has gone missing, and it's like some years later, and her sister is just obsessed with finding out who took her and what happened to her. And one of the men that was kind of accused of the crime back in the day, but it found out he had an alibi. She is really just obsessed with the fact that he did this crime. So you're following his life, and you do get her side of things as well. And my thoughts with this is, I was confused for a lot of the story, and it's meant to be that way, and then at the end it's supposed to be this mind-blowing, everything now makes sense, but I just can't jive with a story that really makes you confused 70% of the time, and then you finally get why you were confused. I don't know. It was just fine for me. Again, it's just kind of all subjective. So in my reading slump, because I was getting into a reading slump and I really didn't want to get into one, I read some light, fluffy romance stories, and that's going to be 2 books by Pippa Grant. The first one that I'm going to talk about is The Grumpy Player Next Door. So the 2 stories I'm going to talk about, they all follow, they're in the same little companion novels about some different baseball players. And so this one particularly is about her brother's teammate. Her brother is on this baseball team. Of course, it's forbidden romance because it's his teammate's sister. And he rents the house next door to her on their off season, and they don't really get along very well, and so that's why it's a grumpy next door neighbor, but it's really not. I went into this one with kind of the wrong expectations. I did give it 4 stars. I thought it was actually pretty cute by the end, but if you do read this one, know that it's not really enemies to lovers, which I feel like was marketed as, and it's actually, they both like each other pretty much from the start, so it's not enemies to lovers. However, it is very rom-com-y, it is very fun, and it hit all my buttons. And then the second one that I read is Jock Blocked by Pippa Grant, and this is again about a baseball player who is literally 30 years old, and he is a virgin because every time he goes to second base with a girl, he gets into a batting slump, hitting slump, and his baseball, goes in the toilet. So he's convinced that doing anything with a girl is unlucky. And so then he meets a girl, and that's that story. And I thought it was cute. Again, rom-com-y, very, very cheesy. There is one thing that Pippa Grant does in both of these stories, and that's to kind of make animals talk, or different things talk. And you have to read the story to know what I mean, but she does use that thing in both of these books, which is fine. I thought they were funny, and they were fun at the time that I read them. The next book I read was one that I meant to get to a little while ago. It was on my TBR and I didn't, but I now have gotten to it, and that is Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier. This is my first Jennifer Hillier. I've never read one, and this follows our main character who has married this very rich movie star, and she is found, the story opens up with her being found in the bathroom. He's dead in the bathtub, and she's covered in blood, and she has a razor blade, and they are convinced that she has killed her husband. It's her trying to figure out what happened to her husband, and then it kind of, she has this kind of mysterious past that is now gonna come out and come back to haunt her now that she's kind of in the public eye. I enjoyed this book. I gave it overall 4 stars. I think I would try Jennifer Hillier again. I like mystery thriller books. I thought this one did a good job. In the same vein, the next book that I picked up is going to be The It Girl by Ruth Ware. So this book is all the time compared to In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead, which I gave 5 stars. I absolutely loved. I did like this one, but not as much. I gave this one 4 stars as well. This follows a girl. We're in present day and kind of flashing back to the past. So in the past, her college roommate was killed, and in the present, the guy that was put in jail for her murder has died in prison. And so it has really haunted the roommate because there are things coming out that maybe he really didn't do the crime, and so now she's going back to investigate, and it's kind of what actually happened to her college roommate. And I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed the story. I didn't guess it, and anytime I'm in a thriller and I don't guess the ending, that's like good. That's fantastic. I love that. So I did like this one. I have read a lot of Ruth Ware. I didn't read one by one, but Ruth Ware is just an okay author for me. Most of hers I think I've given 3 stars, but I did enjoy this one. It's probably one of my most favorite ones by Ruth Ware. Then I continued on with my Dresden reread, and I read Ghost Story. And Changes, I gave 5 stars. This one follows up that, of course, and I gave this one 4 stars. I thought it was fine, but it didn't hold a candle to Changes. I mean, Changes is where the story gets kind of flipped on its head, and I enjoyed Dresden in this. I enjoy the direction that the story is taking, and I can't wait to read more of it to see where things kind of go. But it didn't live up to the expectations of Changes, but I thought it was fine. I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read was I continued on with Stones of Light by Zach Argyle. The first book in that series is The Voice of War, and this is a self-pubbed series that I've been enjoying. So the basic premise of this is there are people that are born with powers shown by the different colors of your eyes, and they can push and pull on objects and other things of that nature. And one of the government officials finds out that his son has a rare eye color and a rare ability, and he's basically like the chosen one, and he's told to run away with that child. And so there's definitely lots of enemies in the story, and I enjoy this one a lot more than the first one, because the first one was kind of a setup book. We were learning about the characters, and this one kind of brought a little more plot to it, and a little more political things, and I really enjoyed that, and I gave it 4 stars. The next one I read was I continued on in this series that I absolutely adored that I read last month, and that's going to be Now I Rise by Kiersten White, and the first book in that series is And I Darken. This is a YA story, but I'd hesitate to call it that it can be read by adults, because this is nothing but political fantasy at its best. There is, of course, some love stories in here, but not to the extent that most YA fantasies have in them. It's mainly, of course, about politics, and I enjoyed this one not as much as the first one. Actually, I enjoyed it a little bit less. These follow the 2 children of a ruler of a kingdom who has basically been captured by the Ottoman Empire, and the Ottoman Empire tells him, you can go back and you can rule your kingdom and you can have your kingdom, except you have to leave your children behind for leverage, so that if you ever go against us again, we'll just kill your children. And so these children grow up behind enemy lines, and it's kind of learning about, do they conform to where they grew up at, or do they still have loyalties to their old home? And there, of course, is the son of the king of the Ottoman Empire, son of the emperor, that comes into play here. And I enjoyed this. Very political, very political. If you don't like political things, don't read it, but I do, and I enjoyed it. I give it 4 stars. The next book that I read that I really enjoyed, and it was in that horror vlog, was The Honeys by Ryan LaSala. This follows our main character. He is gender fluid. He goes by all pronouns he, she, or they, so we can call him whatever we wish. And he wakes up one night and his sister is in his room and she's trying to kill him. And what's so mysterious about this is because his sister is supposed to be way away off at summer camp. And so they have to figure out why his sister did this, what made her do this, what has made her attitude change in the past weeks or so. And he goes back to this summer camp to try to figure out what's going on. And there's, of course, these elite group of girls called the Honeys. And I really highly recommend the audiobook on this, because it's not a full graphic audio, but it does have some very spooky noises in there, and really added a lot to this horror story. So I would highly recommend it. And my favorite book of the month is the first book I read of the month. That's going to be Legacy of Ghosts by Alicia Wanstall-Berg. So this is the second book in the Chordaic Saga series. The first one is going to be Blood of Heirs. And I really enjoy this series. So in the first book, we get a lot of setup about these characters and who they are. We're following this really strong female protagonist who is supposed to be heir to her kingdom. Her mother just wants her to marry and be like a normal girl, but she's like, no, I want to be like the boys. I want to be in the army. I want to fight. I want to become heir, of course, but it's not looked good upon for a woman to be the heir, but she is determined. And then we have our other character, son of a duke, who is determined to also show his, that he can do it, that he can lead one day. and some things happen, and he learns that he has some abilities that are looked down upon in the world. So we're following those two characters, and in the first book they didn't come together, and I thought that they were going to come together right away in this book, but without spoilers, they don't come together right away. And if you like supernatural creatures, if you like fantasy, I highly recommend this. There's some twists in here. Some I saw coming and some I definitely didn't, and so I can't wait to read the finale of the series. That's it, guys. That's all I read for the month of October, and I hope to read a lot more in November, and I hope you guys are gonna have a great reading month in November. Tell me what you read in October. Leave your video links down below. I'll watch them, and I will catch you guys later.